Speaking of Juneteenth, it actually became a holiday back in 2021. And although it is honored by many, it's important to know the history and how to share those stories of freedom and resilience and celebration. Juneteenth Fashion Show founder Leah Frazier and writer and historian Deah Mitchell joined me to share what Juneteenth is all about. So glad to have you here. Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so Deah, I want to start with you. If you could, for people who just know this day as just a holiday, right? Maybe even a day off. Can you share what Juneteenth is and why it's so important? And why it's so important that we celebrate it?
Yeah, well, happy Juneteenth to you. It's absolutely important that we celebrate because, to put it simply, it's the emancipation of Black Texans. And we found this out on June 19th, 1865. And we've been celebrating ever since then.
Yes, indeed.
Strong and proud.
Strong and proud.
Yeah.
We've learned that Galveston was the pivotal location for why we celebrate Juneteenth. So Leah, if you could, can you explain its Texas ties and why that city in particular is so important?
Well, like Deah mentioned, this was where they came and they told the slaves that they were free. General Granger read the general orders, and all throughout the city of Galveston, they went and they were telling the enslaved people, like, now you're free. And in Galveston in particular, that's where some of our first Juneteenth celebrations were held, and that's where we get many of our traditions that we have today. Wearing all white, the type of foods that we eat, and all of that was birthed on Galveston Island.
Wow, wow. And you guys actually got to visit Galveston Island, got to submerge yourselves into that history. Was there anything out there that you were like, oh my gosh, people need to see this if they go to Galveston in order to understand what Juneteenth really means?
There's so much. Deah, what was some of your favorite spots?
You know what, honestly, for me, being a multi-generational Texan, which I'm very proud of, and I think you are as well, everything was significant and special. Being with the locals, but I would probably say the most powerful moment for me was simply being on the Gulf, and just looking at the waters and how spiritual that was for me, and knowing that it's so beautiful, but at the same time, it was the backdrop of a very traumatic experience.
Yes, indeed.
And for me, that was probably the most poignant moment.
There's also a moment you guys talked about with a brick wall. Can you expand upon that?
So I did a tour with the Deah Cultural Center, and it's housed at one of the very historic locations on Strand Street. So even across from the Deah Cultural Center is where they had slave auctions. And so many slaves built the building that houses the Deah Cultural Center. So there's brick walls all throughout. And we were told if you look very closely to some of those walls, you'll actually see fingerprints in the bricks, which were ways that the slaves were able to identify, you know, where they were at. It was another communication symbol. And so throughout those walls, you can put your fingers in the bricks. And to me, it was a connection to my ancestors. And for those folks that visit and see these bricks walls, I'm getting chills just thinking about it right now. It's very emotional. People cry. It's amazing.
I can only imagine. You took the words right out of my mouth. It is incredibly emotional to even touch the same walls that our ancestors touched, and just to think about the things that they went through when they were imprinting their thumb into that wall, right? And so, my goodness, I can only imagine just how'd you feel when you left that experience?
I had my 18-year-old nephew with me, and he was very moved, very touched. You know how it's hard to reach kids, and he's just like, I didn't know any of this history. So to be able to bring him back, to show him where he comes from, and to make that connection, like, that was just the biggest thing for me.
Oh my goodness.
Awesome.
You know what?
Overwhelmed.
Very overwhelming.
Knowledge is power, though, so I'm so glad that you were able to take your 18-year-old nephew, because we have to pass these stories down, right, in order for these things not to happen again, right? And so if you could, Deah specifically, if you could give us any advice to maybe parents or families to share these stories and this history at home, because like I said, it's so important to be able to pass these things down so we know what we have already been through.
Absolutely, and it is so important. It's also important to not start with the tragedy. You know, Black history is so much larger and so much more layered and complex than just simply starting with emancipation, enslavement. I would suggest before you begin that conversation, hopefully you've already opened them up to talking about Black history in general. However, I also want to recommend a book by my dear friend Donald Cox. It's called Juneteenth 101. It is a remarkable guide. It's a great resource, and make sure you pick it up. It's only available at the African American Museum, though.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
very good. So you got to go to the African American Museum to make it happen and to get that book. Very, very good. And that's a great place to start
Wonderful
as
book.
well.
For kids and adults.
Yes, it's for both. You know what? We all have a space to learn.
Yeah.
You guys both have events coming up. Tell me a little bit about those.
Well, today on Juneteenth, and I do want to acknowledge that we are celebrating 160 years of anniversary of Juneteenth. So I'm doing a huge fashion show out at Legacy West honoring our Black designers, culture, entertainment, and it is an entire vibe. The doors open at 5:30, so come join us.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And then you have one coming up this weekend.
Yes, I'll be there. And then also, I'll be this Saturday, I'll be at the African American Museum. You can pick up your copy of this book. And I'll be talking about a mobile app that I developed called Deep LMAR, which is a Black History mobile app, the first one that combines Black history and augmented reality.
Very, very good. Well, you know what? Thank you guys so much for being here. This conversation is so important, and I'm so glad we had it this morning. Happy Juneteenth to you. And thank you guys again at home for tuning in to this history lesson right here. Again, those event details are on your screen. And be sure to celebrate Juneteenth today.